So, about a year ago, I walked into my kitchen, and there on the sofa, sitting in absolute silence, was half a dozen teenagers, each one engaged with their own private screen. Now, I've been in the communications business all my life, and I'm awestruck about the possibility that the internet delivers. But today, I want to talk about my last year, where I've been making a film about teenagers and the internet, and I feel that there's one or two disturbing things, or perhaps 10 disturbing things, that we need to think about. I don't mean they go out to play. I mean, while they're at home, they're tethered, so many of them tethered to a device that fractures their presence. In order to develop an emotional understanding, a young person needs the entire grouping of evolutionary assets: voice, gesture, movement, face. With their eyes on a screen, their attention is split. And therefore, many young people are never absolutely, categorically at home, engaged with the people who might be the mirror for their learning of the complex dance of what it is to be human. Facebook groups, meetups, tweets, and yet it is increasingly difficult for one teenager to arrange to meet another. When they do, in a method dubbed swarming by academics, it's a gradual build-up of choices and possibilities that have no absolute place or time. The endless promise of being in communication mitigates against making an absolute arrangement. Therefore, swarming, rather than being this wonderful democratic thing, privileges those who are socially strong. Once they're there, the same fractured presences, they're all attached to their phone, dealing with the lost, the late, the absent, and the call of their parents. It is now the norm that young people should never be out of contact. And if they do not respond in the number of seconds it takes to message, then they're considered missing in action. The ability to be alone is a central building block of an individual identity. Without an individual identity, you cannot turn to someone else in mutuality, and without turning to someone else in mutuality, you cannot be a participant in a collective society. Yet our teenagers, never home, never quite together, but definitely never alone. So, been a lot about this recently. 1 minute on the net attracts 111 cookies. Now, some of them helpfully, guess your name as you type, but the majority of them are there to work out your desires and habits. When governments try to collect our data, we are quite rightly up in arms. But that's in spite of the fact that governments, at least here, are largely speaking at the behest of an electorate acting in our collective interests. So why are we not similarly up in arms that privately owned, unaccountable, commercially driven companies record, own, and search every interaction regardless of age? That Google knows a great deal more about our children is disquieting, possibly, but that they have a record detailed to the millisecond, permanent, and without the benefit of context that will follow each child into adulthood is terrifying. It's normal for a young person to try on multiple identities that do eventually morph into an adult self. But now, whatever they say, do, or look at, however transitory, will be there forever in an aggregated, uncontestable virtual self. A virtual self that could prove problematic for its real-life counterpart. Now, here are some things about me when I was 17. The things I've redacted, I would rather you did not know. Actually, to be fair, there's some of you that I probably don't mind, but I'm wearing my glasses and I can't see. But anyway, importantly, there's one thing on this list that even 35 years later would change how every single person in this room views me. Some of you might be horrified, some amused, and a handful of you would be so deeply impressed, but I'm not going to tell you. If I was 17 now, the things I've redacted would be known by multiple companies. They would be sold and traded, and they'd be built into my virtual footprint. A virtual footprint that I would never have the opportunity to redact. Dopamine. It's the thing that's released into your brain when you expect a reward. Irrespective of their stated purpose, many, if not most, of the larger sites on the internet have teams that include psychologists, engineers, and they work together to keep our dopamine flowing. Whether it's shopping, entertainment, news, or even education, they know that random points keep us attached, an icon that bounces gets our attention, what color blue we like. Websites are constantly refined to keep the user using. They are knowingly, deliberately, wittingly designed to addict. Growing up in a world that routinely uses reward mechanisms to manipulate behavior distorts your sense of agency. It makes you passive. 109 words of the 14,000 words that make up the terms and conditions of Facebook, just from one page. Of the several hundred teenagers I've spoken to, not one has ever read the terms and conditions all the way to the end of a single website. And yet they've agreed to hundreds, if not thousands. Terms and conditions use the promise of transparency to obfuscate. Terms and conditions do not offer you the freedom of agreeing to some and not to others. Terms and conditions transfer valuable data from the user to the provider, whatever their age. Of course, there are many young people who found a voice and a friend, a way of life, who use the internet creatively and for its convenience. One of them, the brilliant and inspirational Sully Breaks, is going to speak after me. But the vast majority of first world children spend the vast majority of their time on places in the net designed to take their data, not help them learn who they are. Billions of incremental pieces of data is where the value of the net resides. The poster on the wall behind you when you Skype, the GPS as you sit on the sofa, the 150 times that the average UK user looks at their phone each day. Each interaction creates data, builds profiles, values. This generation are persuaded that the services of the sites they visit are free, but the chances are if you do not pay for the service, you are yourself the product. This is the first generation since the war that reasonably might expect they'll be poorer than their parents. They are working 24/7, creating data that makes other people an absolute fortune. Okay, gaming nappies. For me, a symbol of how far the passivity of addiction can distort human behavior in the real world. They are worn so that gamers do not have to interrupt a game to go to the toilet. Moving on. Online pornography. As a method for teaching you about sex is absolutely hopeless. It's changing the sexual norms amongst teenagers as they mirror the role play of the often violent world of commercial sexual fantasy with its damaging gender stereotypes. It's not the curiosity of thumbing through your parents' copy of Joy or Sex, or a forensic look at an explicit photograph. In the name of commercial freedom, pornography is changing the sexual appetites of young people and storing up the future misery of sexual violence in the real world. We do not allow book and magazine publishers this freedom. We do not allow broadcasters this freedom. Not even our free press is that free. Okay, we're getting there, guys. The like button. It gives a lazy sense of involvement, but meanwhile it acts like steroids on the algorithms of the liked information, spreading the like wider, getting more likes. In the name of self-expression, like button limits, it favors the superficial, and it acts as a Trojan horse from one person's data to the next, delivering everything from the name of your fizzy drink to the family photos you upload, the people you love and the people you just met, without any reference to the quality or value of those relationships. What if Mark Zuckerberg had bequeathed our children the interesting, the informative, the important, the affecting, the thank you button? Thank you. The internet is a global, unregulated, unaccountable. Its dominant values are commercial. It's owned by a very small group of people, and we have given them unfettered access to our young before they are fully formed. And there was a utopian moment where it was going to be free, open, and democratic, to be the instrument by which we delivered the enormous potential of human creativity. But so many of the young people I have spent the last year with are enslaved to just one more click. Becoming a participatory human requires imitation and role models. It takes patience and practice, solitude and community. But many of our children have a smartphone in the hands that we should be holding. Thank you.